Welcome to Clay Arts Centre. My name is Regina Farrell-Fagan. I'm the Exhibitions Manager at Clay Arts Centre. We're delighted tonight to have Donté Hayes joining us. He's going to present Welcome to Afro City, and he's going to talk about his work and his journey. Donté just graduated this past May this year, which is great. He graduated with his MFA and his MA from the University of Iowa. He splits his time now between New Jersey and Atlanta. He's represented by Mindy Solomon Gallery. He's got a host of accolades behind his name. He's a 2019 Ceramics Monthly Magazine Emerging Artist and Art Access Fellow. He was also the 2019 winner of the 1858 Prize for Contemporary Southern Art from the Gibbs Museum of Art in Charleston, South Carolina. And I won't go on about it too much because he's going to share it with you himself, and this is who you came to hear it from. And I just see a few more people letting us know where they're from. Okay, great. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Donté. You can go ahead and share, and I'll be in the background. Thank you.
All right, first of all, I want to thank you so much, Regina, for inviting me, as well as Paul for showing my work as well in the exhibition. And thank you for everybody that's coming, and let's get to start this evening. All right, everyone can see it now. First of all, thank you again. And my name is Donté K. Hayes, and this is my presentation on Welcome to Afro City. I say that because a lot of my work speaks to the idea of science fiction, history, as well as my love of hip hop. Growing up, I was like a big science fiction nerd and comic book nerd, and I love Black Panther. Black Panther was like my favorite, and still is one of my favorite comic book characters. And the reason why I loved him so much is because of the first time I ever got to see an actual Black hero in comic books, and that's the reason why I love art in the first place. Growing up, I had a lot of issues with reading, and so I really found that Fahrenheit 451 and reading books like Octavia Butler was like some things that was really powerful in my life. I feel like, especially now, there's people here from Poland, there's people here from, Birmingham, Alabama, the people from Detroit, and right now I'm in New Jersey, and we're all on this wall screen. So I feel like we're all like looking things on a small screen on our laptops or our cell phones. So I kind of feel like we're living in a science fiction world right now. And growing up, Star Trek was one of the biggest things that I would watch, and it was always cool to see Geordi LaForge, who was on the right side, on the bottom left. And he was blind, but yet he was able to fly the ship that the Enterprise was on. So I always felt a kinship to seeing other Black people and people of color in the future, because so many times you would never talk about Black people in the future. Growing up, and then right outside of Atlanta, I would make a lot of different posters right out of high school, and for a lot of the hip hop artists that would come into town, or actually that lived there and worked there. A lot of them I worked with was in Social Def and with Jermaine Dupri and things of that nature, and I would like just make artwork for them. And I was friendly with one of the Crisscross cousins who was on the group. And that's like, those who don't know anything about hip hop, Crisscross was a group back in the 90s, but they would put their pants on backwards. But I would like help them out. So I always like bring that up to say that no matter what, even when you're young, you can still make art. It doesn't have to be like you go straight to college and then go to grad school. I was making artwork even when I was little. Also growing up, I love history. And I love all history, but specifically the Middle Passage. And in high school, this time period always was like something that bugged me. When we would always talk about the idea of like, slavery and then the Civil War, but we never talked about who was on those those ships? Who were the people on those ships? We always just saw them as just like black, black African, they were slaves, but we don't know anything about them. And that always bothered me. Like, oh, first of all, Africa is a continent, it's not a country. We didn't even talk about what area or nationality they would have been. What kind of food did they eat before they came on that slave ship? What kind of clothes did they wear? What kind of kings and queens did they have? What did they do for fun? What was their ceremonies and their birthdays like? We didn't see them as human. We just saw them as just a commodity. And that really bothered me. And so that always stuck back in my mind when I even think about making my work and thinking about like how I see the world. That always goes back. That always comes back to me. And why? The picture on the right is a picture of my grandma. She's no longer with us. She was born on March 4th, 1924, and she actually died on her birthday. And when I created this idea for Welcome to Afro City, I dedicated it to my grandma and granddad. And in the middle is actually a picture of her dad, and that's William Scott Palmer. He was born in 1863 and he died in 1966. So he died when he was 103. But let's think about this: 1863. That means he was actually enslaved himself. He was born in enslavement. So when everyone talks about how slavery was so far away in people's lives, look how close it is in my family generation. My grandma, dad actually was born a slave, so that shows you how deep and how much this runs in our bloodlines, in not just Black Americans but all Americans. We have some things that we really need to grapple with when we think about our lineage as United States citizens. So there, my work is primarily thinking about what constitutes a home, what makes you feel like you're living in a home, what are the smells of being home, what are the things that you cuddle up with? Do you have the dog that runs up to you when you open the door, knows that you're coming before you're even there, or the clothes that you wear when it's getting cold, like right now? Are you getting out all of your sweaters and things of that nature? Just the idea of what feels comfortable. That's what we think of when we really think of what home is. So doing this research, something really struck me as a Christian, and in going to Europe to study and learn more about Western art and all the different things that we saw in our art history classes and stuff. So we had went to Paris, and we went to be a part of Notre Dame's cathedral, and we saw the stained glass windows, and that was so powerful for me to see the rose windows and see all the great buttresses and all of the things that we talked about in art history, and get to see it in real life. And then something really dawned on me: to notice those stained glass windows reminded me of the Middle Passage icon of the slave ship. So even in their iconography, they were creating a slave ship that looked very similar to their stained glass windows. And that really struck me, that even something that they didn't even think of was something easily made. Like, oh, let's make it look like this. This is something we always see. And that's something that we do a lot as human beings. We just automatically do things and don't know why we're doing it, just because just way it is, and then realize all these different connections that we never really noticed. So it was almost like the idea of like God was ordaining them, that they had the right to take another person's humanity away, because God said that they were a better human being in Europe, and then to the Americas, and then to the colonialists, and then to all of the other things that we create societies, that there was an idea of one class better than another class, all in this idea of God. That really struck me. So in undergrad, I went to Kennesaw State University, and that's right outside of Atlanta. And I started actually working in painting and drawing and printmaking. I have a BFA in printmaking as well as a BFA in ceramics. But I didn't start in ceramics until my last 2 years of undergrad. And I wanted to create something that speak to a flip over of the idea of this middle passage. And what if this middle passage was a way to uh, um, supersede and go, and those Africans be able to go to another world, a world that is not in solitude and not in oppression, but a new world, a new environment, a new place of living, and a new way to live and be as one. So I created this piece called New Frontier, and most of it's made out of clay, except for the actual Coca-Cola crate, as well as the hair coming at the bottom. Decided to use the Coca-Cola crate, one being from Atlanta, and those who don't know, Coke was actually started in Atlanta. And when, once again, thinking about when I was trying to get Coke in Europe and, Paris, and then going to Italy, there was always Coke everywhere. There was a few at the group that always wanted to get Pepsi, but they could never find Pepsi in Europe. And I always thought that was interesting, that no matter where you go, you could find Coke. So that kind of gave me the content to think about, like, Coke is it, we enjoy Coke. So we drank it to feel like we're a part of, a society. So I wanted to use that crate to represent that they saw human beings as a commodity too, but they also see branding as a commodity. They see the Black culture as a commodity to be loved, but not actually the people themselves. The bottom has hair coming out, and that's actually real hair, not mine. As you can see, I have no more left from all the hair that I took for this piece. But it's like speaking to the idea of like the explosion of when a rocket ship goes up in the air. This is also speaking to, no matter where you go, your roots will always come with you. You're always bringing your roots to the environment that you live, even if you've never been to Africa, as my ancestry, doesn't mean that I still don't have that same rhythm, that same beat, and that love pattern inside of me still. This other piece that I made in 2015 is called Time Capsule, and most of this is also made out of clay, except for the Coca-Cola crate. And on this piece, I was once again thinking about that middle passage and really thinking about the humanity of each and every one that was on that ship, which we never ever speak about, and that continually that I think about that every time we speak on the middle passage. We never say "Er," we never do that "Er," we never do that stop and say, these were human beings first. Let's talk about that. Most likely they were West African. Most likely they were coming from Nigeria, or what we now call Ghana. So we need to first talk about that. So this piece here is called Time Capsule. And once again, I was thinking, like, let's use the Coca-Cola crate as content, and then use clay as a way to show memory. And just like a time capsule, you want to always be able to put some of the things that you are at that moment. And at that moment, let's say that you were being taken from your place of home, that you don't know who this person is taking you, and you're just being taken to another place and being pushed and beaten so you can go on this ship to somewhere that you never known. What would you get? You weren't knowing that you were going to leave. So there would be nothing for you to take but the things that you have right in your hand. You might even been at sleep, and you might have been naked in the bed. You might not even have give you anything. So the only thing you might have had is the hair on your head, or the teeth that you have. In the piece, I have a lot of different things in the flask to represent, like, what are those things that you would have been able to take when you would be abruptly taken, almost just like if you were abducted like an alien. What would you be able to take before you go up on the spaceship? So from there, this idea I continued to push. Going to grad school, as Virginia said, I went to the University of Iowa, and coming from Georgia and seeing a lot of people that, Black and brown and all different kind of people, and then going to a place in the Midwest that no one looked like me. Most of the people there, some of them never even seen a Black person as a teacher. And I was teaching ceramics one for my second and third year there, and a lot of my students would say I was the first Black person that ever taught them, and they got all the way to college, and I was the first Black person to actually be an authority figure in some way to them. And that really struck me once again, feeling just like astronaut going to a new world and being seen by other people seeing me like I was alien to them. So the thing that really got me was this symbol of what does it feel like to be welcome into a space? What does it feel like to be hospitable in a space? So that was something that always struck with me when I would go walk in the streets of Iowa City and actually see someone that was Black or brown and like notice them, and you will just like nod our head and be like, yo, what's up? Even though I knew nothing about them, you just felt like that kingship that you would see somebody that looked like you that might understand what you're feeling, being the only person in that space. And so the first thing that came up to me thinking of like, how could I explain this to other people in my work? And the first thing that came up to me was this idea of the pineapple. For those who are from the South, we see pineapples everywhere. And it's something that this doesn't look nothing old to us, it doesn't look shocking to us. We will go to like big homes or small homes and we'll see like a little pineapple. And they're usually always gold. And my mom, she would say, oh, yeah, that means the symbol of welcoming and hospitality. Never knew really what that really meant until I started to do my own research while I was at Iowa. And I found out that the pineapple actually is not from Hawaii. A lot of times we always hear that the pineapple is from Hawaii. And, when I come down, when we go visit Hawaii, they bring you the nice lei. They give you the nice pineapple drink. We're sucking the nice pineapple drink and we're thinking, oh, yes, this is their culture. The Hawaiian culture, they just love welcoming people and making you feel at home. Once again, we had to make that stop. Wrong. Pineapples never was cultivated in Hawaii until the late 1800s, not to 1901 when the Dole Pineapple Company actually brought them there so they can use it as a way to cultivate and brand the pineapple as a ultimate exotic fruit from this new amazing new country state called Hawaii. So right there, we are already wrong in the idea that their culture has nothing to do with welcoming hospitality with a pineapple. That is not why they're hospitable. It has nothing to do with that. They never even heard of a pineapple. Actually, pineapples come from South America, most likely Brazil or Paraguay, in that region of the country. And the indigenous people there, they used it as a way of in their ceremonies for drinks, to even make beer out of it. They used their art with it. They even used it for their ceremonies for rituals, all the way to birthdays, and also rituals for death. They even used it for money as a way of bartering with the different islands, countries like Barbados and things of that nature. So that's how it cross-pollinated to different areas from there. And then from there, it went to South Carolina and my home state of Georgia. So first of all, a pineapple is a plant. It does not grow in trees. And once again, this is what a pineapple looks when it's starting to bud and cultivate. It looks alien to me. So that also like got me back to this idea of like this fruit that looks hard to get in, but is juicy inside. How do we get this idea for this pineapple to represent welcoming and hospitality? And that is coming from colonialism. King Charles II, his nickname actually was King Pine. He actually did everything he could to show his power to all of the different subjects in his court by using a pineapple as his symbol to say, look at all the abundant I can have from all of the great new worlds of the Caribbean and South America and the new world of now what we call South Carolina and Georgia. He would bring back these pineapples and bring it back to the court in England. However, the pineapple was so beautiful and cost so much to bring and cultivate. It cost $8,000 per pineapple to even get back to England. So they never, colonials and those who lived in England never actually ate the pineapple. They used it as a decoration. So it was like a decorative art. And they would put it on their tables when they had like a great feast. So it was their artwork to represent about how bountiful their power is and all the great things that they have with their power, which is really powerful that those who were in colonial world, they saw welcoming as and hospitality as a symbol of power. They didn't see it just as something nice. They actually saw it as something that showed that you were rich. So what they would do after the pineapple started to get bad, they still would not eat the pineapple. The workers were actually give it to the poor, and and then they actually were the ones that would actually eat the pineapple. So the only people that actually ate the pineapple during the colonial times were the poor, not the rich or the bourgeois. So now, how do we get the idea of the pineapple for welcoming? And once again, just like a pineapple, once it starts to get bad, it also shows time. So when a slave ship would come to the dock, the foreman would run out with a pineapple, put it on the big stick in front of the dock, and that would notify as a beacon to say that a new shipment of enslaved Africans had arrived. So that was the first thing that would come off that ship. Those Africans would see would be a pineapple. That was their welcoming, which is very, very crazy down that we think of when we say that, oh yeah, the pineapple has a different and a dark side. Continuing this um, research, I started to see more things about during that colonial times, how they used the pineapple in their artwork. This here is called Portrait of a Haitian Woman, and it was created by a French Canadian um, painter who had a big property and plantation in Haiti. And he commissioned this piece. So from Francois to create this piece showing one of his enslaved Africans, Haitians, as a portrait showing his abundance of fruit and bounty. And usually they always had like their breast hanging out and a basket of fruit with a pineapple on the side. So once again, it was like showing that even in their who they have the right to say who has access to things, who has access to the art, who has access to the way we see in our bounty and our love of who we are, not from the people that actually are going through the oppression. So from there, I started to start thinking about how I was going to portray this in my work. And there's so much research, but I also wanted to speak on my own ways. I don't want it just to be about research and not the personal. As you said in the beginning, my work speaks on my love of science fiction, my love of hip hop, and my love of history, but also that personal feeling of not actually feeling welcome in the space. My first year in grad school was really tough. When I first showed my work to my different cohort, they were shocked. They loved the work until they found out a Black person made it. Some of them were like, "Why are you making this work? You should be doing watermelons. That's what the symbol that Black people should be doing." So that already that showed like in a space where you would think would be a welcoming space in intellectual and progressive so-called space, even there, being Black or brown, it was hostile to be in that space. The ideas that I had, there was almost like, I've never heard of those things. I'm like, aren't you in the same classes as I am? You don't know these same situations. You don't see these same connections. And so I really knew that I had to make this work. It was more about like getting this research out, but also speaking to truths that a lot of my cohort didn't even see. And specifically like the United States and this world hasn't seen. So on the left, you can see there's a picture of the Great Death Star, the Empire's power to destroy other worlds. And then the right side is a subwoofer. And I feel like that also can change people's worlds. What was the biggest thing that rap did? The music brought everywhere in the world, no matter if you're black or white, Asian, Hispanic, no matter who you are, even if you can't even speak the language that you're listening to, everyone can understand that beat and that sound of hip hop. So that became an empire in a way too, that sound. So I wanted to portray both of those things, like the positive and the negative. Also, loving all things that are science fiction. This here is a Dalek, and those who love the BBC's Doctor Who, this is an extraterrestrial fictional character culture who will go to different time and space and worlds and exterminate other worlds and people so they could say that they thought were lesser than they were. And the thing that I started to notice is the bulbous shapes in the bottom half of each Dalek, and that kind of reminded me of the breast of a woman as well. So I started to think about what also a breast also speaks to the nurturing and things of that nature. What else do we see when we see a ball like that? We see a stress ball. So all those things started to play in my idea of like, what could I make that actually feels welcoming? A lot of times when we're making art, we don't want anyone to touch it. It's supposed to be you're there, and then you have a glass piece, especially if it's sculpture, that you are but past it. You can't even touch it. There's somebody holding them real tight, looking at you that you better not touch that piece of art. But I was gonna think of it in switch. I wanted the work to be inviting. I wanted you to feel like you could touch it. I wanted to feel that you could own ownership. And it was almost an idea for me to think of it as a black man. I never get that feeling. I always get that feeling that I'm doing something that should not be there, or why are you there, or I'm so glad you're here. It's so good to see another black person here. I'm just not a regular human being. I just can't. I can only be what other people see me as, that gaze. So, how do I wanted to push this work? Going back to the idea of who were those people on those ships started really making me think of going back to my roots. So I studied a lot of the different ceremonies in West Africa. And actually, I was more important for me was not just the actual ceremonies and rituals, but actually the headdresses, the things that they wore, because those things were actually, when they came out, you knew that this was about being a man, a boy to a man. If this came out, you knew that this was going to be a wedding. If they were wearing this, they know this was going to be something about death. So it was like the ding 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 moment that I could actually use a texture to describe and actually visually explain of what it feels like to be welcomed. So once again, I continue to look at these different textures in the work for my work. Here you can see this amazing breastplate. Once again, I was thinking that, man, that would be an amazing idea to speak on the breastplate as a representation of vulnerability. So from there, also that texture of raffia. Raffia is used in multiple ways as hair, as actual domiciles. If you go to even South Carolina, the slave quarters look just like the same homes that they would have been if they were in Africa. So that also struck to me that like I said, once again, you're in a new environment. You do what you know. You go back to what you know that makes you feel like closest to being in comfort or being in a sanctuary. So the next thing was hair. And lots of people say, oh, why is hair something that seems welcoming to you? This is very personal. And my mom, she has a lot of issues, and some of them deal with a lot of the mental issues that she has. And with those issues, she takes her hair out. And growing up, and I remember going in high school, I remember vividly after like sports events, and I would come and open the door, wouldn't know where my mom is, don't know where she is in the room or if she's even there. But I would go to the kitchen because you're hungry as soon as you get home, especially when you're right out in high school. And I would see hair on the kitchen table, and that made me feel good because I knew somewhere in that home my mom was there. So I kind of saw hair as a positive thing, not think something negative, something in a way that was comforting to know that she was safe because her hair was everywhere. So if her hair was there, that means she was safe too, and that she was in the space that I was. But also hair also speaks to something even more powerful. Many times we watch these movies and TV shows that you see forensics, and they're always looking for hair follicles, and those hair follicles are ways to find who that person is. So I also related that importance to hair to that idea of no matter where you're from, you can be found again through your DNA. But thirdly, hair can also look like waves. And those waves also brought me to the idea of those through the slave ship and going through Africa to the New World and going the Atlantic slave trade. Those waves were big. So that also made me think, but also sound waves, the music I'm listening to when I'm making the work. So those things also continually I'm thinking about when I'm making the work too. And lastly, when you also look at waves, it also reminds you of new worlds. So um, when you go from A to point B, you have a wormhole, and wormholes has that spinning. So that repetition comes into play. So all these different things I'm thinking about formally when I'm creating work, not just the personal, but it's also the universal. Lastly, um, I wanted to make something that was repetitive. Having a background in printmaking, that's like one of the most repetitive things you can do in a process of you do the same thing, you hopefully you'll get the same results. And these are Aboriginal dream paintings. And when I'm creating my work, it's very similar to how they create theirs, except they are using a pigment and having a stick and they're making that dot. But they're making that dot to the point they're like transcending to different times and different places. I do that too when I'm actually creating my work. I first always start my work by using coil slash pinch method, and then this is very fast. I never do any drawing before I start. It's like it's just up, you know. So that could take me like 5 hours to make a piece that's like 20 inches tall. That might take me 5 hours of just making the form. So that's the fast part. The slow part comes in when I'm using the needle tool and I have a picture of one of my prints that's an etching, and I kind of see it more like I'm etching the form. I'm making the texture and the form become one. And I'm just using a needle tool to create the marks. So these marks take me places. I've said this many times to when a lot of people ask me how long my work takes. And I say, do you want to know the time it took just for me to do the mark? Or it took all of my life actually to make this work. All the different things that I've been through, all the different things that I've learned growing up created this work. However, the time that is spent to make it might have taken maybe 16 hours of just straight making a mark. A lot of times I'll do that and I won't even get up. I won't even have something to eat. I won't even take a break. I won't go to the bathroom. But as soon as I'm done after those 16 hours, I have to get up. I have to go to bed. I have to go to the bathroom. So it's like I get in a trance. It's crazy. So once again, I'm thinking about how I'm going to create this work. And this is the new work that I've been creating. And I call it this idea of this welcoming. And this piece here goes back to this idea of the Dalek. And I wanted to play on the opposite of welcoming. What is it? What if you are not feeling welcomed? And this piece was like one of the first pieces I made in grad school. And I made this in 2018. And it's called the Dalek. As you can see that it has like also has an interesting look to speak on the idea of abundance as well as speaking on who has the access to food, who has access to the university, who has access to a good home, a good family life, a good neighborhood, places where they can go that's not just a liquor store, so I was thinking of all those things when I created this work. But also, if you notice, formally the bulbous shapes have like this sunflower coming out, so it's also speaking of like even through all things that are negative, there's still an option to like grow, and you can even grow even when things are not looking they're looking bleak. Here is the opposite of that, and this piece is called Welcome. And I wanted this piece, and once again, I want to make sure this is clear. All the work that I'm showing you is probably between 16 to 21 inches. And in this work, I wanted to make sure that when you saw it, it wasn't, you're not going to be looking at it as like some kind of monumental thing. I wanted to see that this this black piece of object can be in a space, and you can love that object without any buts, or they were nice people, but you know so I want these objects actually to feel like you can cuddle them, that you can touch them, that you can be one with them in your space. Here, this piece is called Supersonic Bond. And on this, it's like I was going back to the idea of art history, Western history of the, Venus of Willendorf, as well as thinking of what do we call empires? A lot of times we speak on empires as the mother, you know, like this is the mother. We have the motherland, or the United States. When we see the Statue of Liberty, it's a woman. So I wanted to give that idea of like we all have this supersonic bond that connects us all together. However, other things take us away from that bond. If we really truly want to get back to that bond, we have to go back to the beginning, to our mothers. And so I was thinking, like, when you have a mom that's really, serious, she'll be like, "Get down from there." So like that boom, that sound that you hear when your mom calling you. So I'm speaking about that, but I'm also speaking this is like a place for all of those sonic things that we hear that makes us think of home, can all be in one space. This piece here is called Withstand. And this piece I started making in 2000, I made in 2019. Another thing that is interesting with the work, everything that I create always starts with like a pineapple shape, and then I use that to create the piece. So when I was making this, I was thinking about what is it like to stand in a place when no one looks like you, when you're not sure if you should speak up, or where you're wondering and you're hoping that someone's going to speak up and heard something that was said negative towards you, or something racist towards you, and you're looking around and no one's there to protect you. You're the only one. You have to withstand all those different things. So a lot of times when they see the work, the first thing people say, "Oh yes, you're talking about the Black experience." Of course I'm Black, you know however, are you talking about the white experience because you're white? Well, I'm talking about a universal experience. Well, you know what? So am I. This work is also speaking about the universal. We're all can know and understand to feel unwelcome in a space, or feeling welcome in the space. We all know when it is when we open the door and everyone stops laughing when you come into the room. It doesn't have to, you don't have to be Black to have that feeling. So I'm trying to speak to this idea that when you see my work, yes, look at artists of color, look at this Black object as not just being Black, that this doesn't really relate to me. It all relates to you, because this is the human's experience that I'm speaking on, not just the Black experience. This piece here is called Handle. And when I was thinking of this piece, as we all know, this piece is made out of clay. So a lot of times we think of clay, the first thing someone says, "Oh, so can you make me a cup? Can you make me a mug?" So I wanted to make a sculpture that speaks to the idea of the handle. But can you handle things? Can you handle what it's like to live in this world and find your home, find places where you feel comfortable being different than someone else? Can you handle just the day to day of life? So I wanted to make something that speaks to something that's functional, but it's actually a sculpture. This piece is one of my most favorite pieces that I've made. I made this one also in 2019. This one's called Double Consciousness, and it goes back to W.B. Du Bois and the idea of the double consciousness that Black folk have. This idea that we're living in two worlds. And it's really deep when you're thinking about how you're living in two worlds. You're living in a world that may or may not want you around, and then you're living in a world that sees you as who you are. And how do you navigate that? Or how do you navigate, at one time being the son, and then the next time you're actually a father? The double consciousness of living life. And how do we navigate living life, having all these different um, obligations that we have to go through? So now you say, why don't I have a picture of coral? I want to address this. A lot of times I'm also thinking about coral in the work and how that texture looks like, that texture that I create on the piece looking like coral. When coral is alive, it's actually colorful, but when it's dead, it's white. So I started to create some of the work in porcelain. And you say, okay, what does it have to do with what I'm saying about welcoming and hospitality? It has a lot to do with it. First of all, the research. When in on the Middle Passage, many didn't make it to the New World from those ships because they jumped overboard because they didn't want to be oppressed for the rest of their lives, or they were actually thrown overboard because of lack of food enough for the carry to the long voyage. So that was a crazy time being on those ships that you don't know if you were going to even survive to the destination. And then also I related that to the idea of how come the only time people ever listen and speak to Black folk is when they're dying. And I thought that was really powerful, especially this summer. And we saw all the things going on with Eric Gardner, Breonna Taylor's, and the first time everyone in the United States actually saw Black people's bodies in dying is when the first time they were like, oh, we really need to look at this and listen more. So that really struck me that that was the only time Black bodies are actually spoken is when in trauma. So this piece here is called Relax. And in this, I was thinking, just like anyone else, when you're told about speaking about things like, I feel like, I'm being treated different because of my race. Oh, don't just relax. No, they're just being good. They're just being nice. You're overreacting. You're overreacting. So I wanted to once again, like for Black folks and brown folks, your knowledge is like snuffed out. You're no longer your identity. You have become just dead to which how you feel. You're gaslighted. So then I thought of another way to see this, and I thought of that in this piece called Release. And like once all of that is out, you're released to the world to like just see who you are and the body that you have. And are you going to be loved by that body or used as fodder for reasons of hatred? So going further, I wanted to create this idea of welcome to Afro City. And Afro City is a place that's going to be in the year 3021. And actually, it will be created after, how this the environment has been destroyed. And we will have to all start anew. And this city, all will become welcome, not just because you're Black or just because you're white, everyone, no matter who you are. And it just happens that it was created by two Black people. In this piece, I wanted to research more about the headdress. And I was thinking when I saw this headdress, the first thing I thought of was a womb. And so I created this piece called The Womb. And if you want to create a new world, you will have to start from scratch. You will have to start and you have to reborn yourself. So I felt like in order to be a part of Welcome City, we all will have to be initiated into a new world. We all will have to take on all of the garbage and all of the baggage that we had, and we can no longer live in that way. So we will have to become new. So I created this piece called Womb, and this is like one of the newest pieces that I've been working with. From there, you also have to have the party. You have to have the ceremony. So I call this prepare. And just like a ceremony, you have to prepare for the ceremony. You got to know who is going to be there, who is going to be, what kind of food you're going to have, what kind of dress code is there going to be, where is it going to even be at. So I created this piece called Prepare, to thinking of like, this is the opportunity to all be initiated to something greater than ourselves, that we can all be welcome to a space and not have to think yourself or wonder if you're welcome anywhere. So from here, I created this piece called Sanctuary. And I was thinking way back into the the previous ideas in the work with the breastplate. And the breastplate is like a way of protecting yourself from all the things that go through each day. The top with the bulbous shapes is also like the idea of eyes, and you have to be on a swivel, just like if you were playing football, you have to look all the way around before you get tackled. And a lot of times that's how you feel when you're in a space and as a Black person and feeling a space and you don't feel like you really should be there. You're looking around hoping that you will have sanctuary. So I'm always thinking that this would be that piece that when you see it, you will once again feel like you're home again. And with that, I want to thank you. And if you want to know more about my work, you can look at my Instagram as well as my website. And I look forward to hearing the comments or any more questions after my presentation. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Donté. That was absolutely amazing. Very, very informative. Donté, thank you so much for tonight. That was really powerful, very engaging, and you shared so well with us. I really appreciate you being here and participating with us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me too. I had a great time.
I see one more message. Tim Clark said, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. And like I said, I'm looking forward to visiting in real life with my mask on, of course.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Because that's a form of welcoming.
Yeah, we'll take.
That is a form of welcoming.
Take you up on that offer.
Yeah.
And just remind everybody, please remember to check out the Concepts in Clay exhibition. There's a link in the chat there. But we will be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow, and we'll send you the link to the exhibition, and you can see more of Donté's work and the rest of the exhibition, which is really fabulous. So thank you again, Donté. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Bye-bye.